My phrase that I always say is do what works until it doesn't. Not worrying about what the Instagram experts are telling you that you should be doing at each milestone of your baby's life and just being like, this is what's working. And I'm happy and my kids are happy and we're loving it. And we're going to keep doing this until somebody's not loving it.
Welcome to More Than Mama, the podcast, where we dive into the highs and lows of motherhood and everything in between. The vibe here is coffee or a cocktail with friends meets interesting or inspirational TED Talk. I'm Bryony, an introvert mum coming out of my shell to ask the big questions about motherhood and beyond. Let's dive in. Welcome to More Than Mama, the podcast, where we dive into the beautiful, messy, ever-evolving, some days absolute shit show, some days absolutely joyful journey of motherhood. Today, I love this episode. I love this chat. The great thing about a podcast, yes, I'm an introvert and perhaps the most unlikely podcast host, but I get to chat to cool people and ask them all the questions I want to ask. So the nerd in me who just wants to get all the answers from all the people and gurus I'm interested in, winning at life. Joining us today is the amazing Shayla from Hey Shayla, a voice that most of you will know and love for her real, relatable insights on motherhood. She is here to chat today about finding your flow in motherhood, whether you're in the thick of those newborn days, not sleeping and it's crazy, or whether you're navigating the transition from 1 to 3 kids. She rocked up to record with me with her tiny little newborn, and massive respect and so grateful that she was able to come and have this conversation. She's also a real expert in kind of guiding light on cultivating a mindset that allows you to thrive rather than just surviving in this quite challenging, sleep deprived, bit of a shock to the system for many season of life. We're going to explore the challenges and triumphs that come with expanding your family, the mindset shifts that can make a world of difference, and her practical tips on managing and staying grounded and finding your flow amidst the chaos, really. So grab your coffee, get comfortable. Let's jump into this conversation with Shayla on finding your flow in motherhood, making those tough transitions smoother, and embracing the mindset that will carry you through, because God knows, I think some days we all need that. Let's go. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited.
No, thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited and honored that even in the early weeks of postpartum, you are here. And it's so nice to be able to see him as well. He's so cute.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, and I feel like early postpartum too can be an insane time, but it also can be like a kind of a quiet time where you're like, in your little bubble. You're like, all right, chatting with someone on the internet. I love this. This is a nice little mind break.
Yeah. I feel like it was definitely a perspective shift for me as well with my second. I kind of felt like actually you do have quite a lot of the time because, in that kind of newborn period where they're sleeping and they can just sit on the boob and you can chat or you can do other things. Whereas first time around, I probably would have said no, I can't do anything other than look after this little one.
Oh my gosh, 100%. And each one you have, it gives you such an insane perspective. I remember a friend of mine, we went to a quick trip. And with your first, you would have never taken your baby. You'd be like, I can't go. Right. My baby's 4 months old. Hers, what was her second? She's like, oh, I'll just take the baby. I'll leave the toddler at home and I'll just take the baby. And you're like, could you imagine saying that with your first? Never in a million years. But your second, you're like, oh, this will be easy. I'll just take the baby.
Yeah, completely. My first was during COVID as well. So we had this added layer of anxiety that no one had been anywhere. And we were joking, my husband and I, because with our second, we were out the door straight away, going to all the things, literally immediately after birth. Whereas with our first, it took us months and months to even go to the park, which is maybe 10 minutes down the road. It was ridiculous.
But that was the time. It was wild. Yeah.
Yeah. So crazy. So how are you doing? How's recovery been and adjusting to having a fifth person in the family? That's insane. It's amazing.
It is. It's so fun. Well, I can finally set him down during my pregnancy. I was like, I just want to set this baby down. Because it was definitely my hardest pregnancy with the 2 other girls, just having 2 toddlers to take care of and keep alive. And then me feeling super tired and sad that we didn't go 10 minutes to the park or whatever, because my energy was so low. But my sister and I had babies a day apart. And she has a 7-year-old who is pretty independent. And then I've got my two girls who are not very independent. And so when I FaceTime her, she's always laying in bed. And I'm like, wow,
Amazing.
wow. Yeah, that's incredible. And she's like, I don't know. I don't think I could do what you do. And I'm like, girl, I don't have a choice. I'm not choosing to get up to do this. I would love to be lying in bed. So, kind of what you said, it's been a lot more active. I think the first 40 days is a book that I read, and I'm very, like, I think that that's very important to just like rest, nourish
Yeah.
yourself, and just like take those days. I'm on like day 16, and we've been to Target, and we've been to this, and we've been to that, and, blah, 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 and like, someone on our walk the other day was like, wow, good for you. And I was like, I don't think so. I don't think that's, nope. I don't want to be super mom. I don't want to, like, I think I should be at home taking a nap, but this is like the reality. And
Mm.
it just is the reality, and that's fine. And so it's been a lot more active. Um, on the flip side, my husband has been incredible. Like, he's basically taken over toddler duty and just like does everything with them, and it's my job to like take care of the baby. So that combination has been crucial for this to go well. So I think it has been active, but I also have had so much support, which just makes or breaks everything. So
Yeah.
it's been great overall.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, completely. Like, everyone says it takes a village, right? And then it's kind of like, where's the village? But if your
Literally.
partner like has your back, then, you're pretty solid. Like,
Absolutely.
that's what you need.
Yeah, and I think I keep comparing, like, because I've been doing a lot of mindset work like since probably since my first, but for sure since my second. And I'm always like, Shayla with my first, because my husband's having a tough time. He's like, holy crap, because our kids are having like crazy tantrums. It's just been nuts. And he is just absolutely spent at the end of the day. Shayla with my first baby would be like, now you know. Now you get it.
Yeah.
It's hard, isn't it? Oh, I understand why you're so tired, because yeah, this is my life every day. Like, just rubbing it in his face. Shayla now is going, how can I support you? It is
Yeah.
super hard and it's super difficult. And I know because I live it. And I think that I'm so grateful that you're doing all this, but I also don't want you to burn out, because you get to
Mm,
come home from work and help me when I'm taking care of the girls. You're not getting that because I'm up in newborn bubble land, and I'm not
mm,
giving you that relief. And so once I kind of realized that, I was like, okay, I need to step up a little bit and like maybe take over a bath time, or maybe take over a meal. Or he came home from the zoo one day, and I called him. I was like, what's for dinner? And he was like, I was like,
yeah.
I got it. I got you. Like, and so I made sure that we had a dinner and just like supported him instead of just being like,
Yeah.
yep, it's hard, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think that support both ways.
Yeah, that's such an interesting. Yeah, I think it's like really important probably to acknowledge, and that mindset stuff, like for me as well, I think it came so much later
Yes.
because in with your first, there's that whole like, you're in the thick of that whole matrescent thing, right? You're like, who am I? What's going on? Oh my
Yes.
God. Like you're, really drowning in it. And it's kind of, I guess it's hard to see past your stuff and the
Yes.
struggles that you're having.
100.
But actually, like, both of you have adjustments to make. And I think it's quite popular at the moment to talk about the mental load of motherhood and how we need more from our partners, which is true. And, also I'm very lucky to have a partner who is super supportive. I know not everyone
Yeah.
is, but in the same breath, our partners have struggles too. It's hard, it's overstimulating. They've got a lot on their plate. And yeah, it's that mindset piece of like being able to step back and be like, this is not a competition. When my husband says he's tired, he is
Yes.
not saying you are not also exhausted, right? Like I'm tired, but so is he, and that's okay. And I can say to him too, like, what do you
Yeah.
need? How can I support you?
Totally. Yeah. And that competition thing, I think I would assume everyone can relate to, because as soon as my husband says he's tired, the next thing I say is me too. Like, yeah, but
Yeah.
don't think that I'm
Yeah.
not tired too. Like, and you're right, it is something that you need to like acknowledge and support back and forth, because he just came home from work. So, and he doesn't
Yeah.
know if you're with your kids every single day, you know
Mm,
how to calm the tantrums. You know
mm,
what toy to pull out to distract, or you know the things that like work well where he might not. And he's coming in as the dad and he's got his own set of tools where you're like, that's not going to work. And then it works. And you're like, wait, what? But giving him the grace too of like, it's sometimes harder for them because they don't know those little nuances with your kids. And you're like, okay, you can either be like, well, that's not his favorite cup. Why did you give him that cup? Like, or you can
yeah.
help them out, or you can talk to your kid and say, hey, that dad's giving you that cup. That one's going to work just great, and support your partner. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's so much. But it is
Yeah.
getting out of your bubble, though. That is like such a key factor because you're literally just thinking about your little world and your everything that you're doing and your kids are doing or whatever. And then when someone else has anything, you're like, how does that affect me kind of instead of how can I support you in your bubble? I love that
Yeah.
kind of example that you gave.
I guess it takes time, doesn't it? Also, I think I mean, I know not everyone chooses to have multiple children, but definitely like for me, having a second and having that time to kind of grow into motherhood and just get used to things. I'm much more able to kind of step back and like we've had conversations where we've been like, okay, like what do you need in those moments when you're really overwhelmed? So then when I'm like touchy and moody because he's saying he's tired and I'm like, you're tired? Well, I'm night weaning our youngest right now and I've been up 12 times in the night. And what have you done? Like you've been up twice with our toddler and I would like kill for that. That would be amazing. Then I'm actually in those moments able to be like, right, like it's not, we can both be tired. He's able to be like, okay, what does she need in this moment? Maybe I shouldn't be talking too much about being tired. We can both be tired, but maybe I'll just be like, do you need this? And yeah, you can kind of figure it out together, can't you?
Yeah, and it's been interesting too because I am doing this mindset work and I'm trying to teach it to other people. So it's been interesting to talk to my husband through this because he's kind of going through.
Mm,
And a friend of mine told me this. They're like, because I was like, how am I going to do it with three? And she's like, your husbands literally have to do more. Like because
yeah.
I feel like as moms, with your second, you're like, I am at my limit, but I'm doing everything and I can do everything and I don't need any help. And you want to help me with something? I don't know. No, I'm good. Like you just don't ask for the help that you need. And then when you have another one, you literally have to. You're like, I
Yeah.
can't do it all anymore. And so you ask for more of your partner. And so I would imagine that the subsequent pregnancies would be harder on them because they're being asked of more. And I've got like you, I have a great partner and he stepped right up to the game. It's hard. It's hard. And I
Yeah.
told him, I was like, with Aaliyah, with my first, I was constantly thinking about what was going outside of the house. Ugh, I can't go on that trip anymore because I have a baby. I can't run out to coffee with you in 5 minutes because I can't get her out the door in 5 minutes. My husband gets to go to work and do something different. And he's like, gets to go to work. I'm like, yes, you get to use your brain a different way. And I was constantly just like, I am trapped at home with this baby. And then he was like, Shayla, I would do anything to be home and see all of these things that you get to see with her every single day. And when I turned that lens from outside of my house into my house and was very present with her and like did play with her and did show her the little foods that we were doing and like the focus was in my home and not worrying about everything that I was missing, that changed so much. And like then you added the second, and you're right, the matrescence thing, because my second I had 2 years after my first. So I was like pretty well into what they say, it's like a year and a half to 3 years that it takes to like become a
Yeah.
mother, feel like a mother. So that's when it happened for me. And I was like, okay, we got this. Like, I am here. I am present. I'm not trying to be somewhere else. I'm like fully bought in on this motherhood family thing. And like, I'm loving it. And I've just kind of been talking to my husband about that. Like, cause he's like, oh, I'm at work. They're down a few people or this or that and da 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 da. And like, he'll be on his phone like we all do. And I'm like, I know from experience that you have to turn and be super present here. I hope this,
Mm.
I love my husband. He's doing a phenomenal job. And I hope that that's the message that I'm getting across here. I don't want to be like, he's struggling. He's he'll be like, thanks, Shay. Like
Yeah.
he's doing phenomenally and he's having a tough time.
I guess that's the important thing to acknowledge for moms,
Yeah.
for dads, for partners, like everybody. Like they can be incredible and amazing and stepping up and doing all the things. And it's really tough.
Yeah.
Like it just is.
Yes. Yeah. And for mothers, like that's a very valid feeling to feel too. Like, what is happening? And I love it. I wouldn't change it, but like, holy crap.
Yeah. And that was so powerful for me, actually, what you said about kind of turning the mindset and the lens on, you see your partner go out to work and feeling trapped maybe with the baby, and they get to sort of travel to work and have a bit of alone time. They get to have a hot drink while they're at the office and talk to adults, and and you can see all that. And I really struggle with that. That was like a massive thing for me. And then actually you have conversations with your partner, and like you say, they're kind of like, well, yeah, but the whole time I'm like worrying about you guys, and I'm thinking I'm missing out on this stuff, and I'm stressed, and I know that you're having a hard time, and I don't want you to be having a hard time,
Totally.
and I hate not being there to like help. So it's kind of, yeah, it takes time, doesn't it? I think to appreciate both perspectives, and then to kind of figure out how to go forward with like a healthier mindset about the whole thing. And once you kind of, I don't know about you, but for me, I think I'd taken on all this conditioning of like, you have to be the same person you were before motherhood, and you're succeeding if you're showing everybody that you're exactly as you were, and like nothing's changed, because being a mum for some reason these days isn't like cool. Like people want you to go back to some glamorous career or
Yeah,
whatever, and to be like, actually, like being with my kids is amazing and fulfilling, and that's worth it. It seems to be a bit unfashionable maybe, and
totally.
so I kind of put pressure on myself to be doing different things, when actually I just needed to lean into it and be like, hey, like this is life now, and I'm just going to roll with it.
Right. And like, what other thing are you supposed to go through transformation and not change on the other side? Like, you go to get your
Right.
doctorate and now you're a doctor. Your childhood friends are gonna be like, who are you? And you're like, well, I'm a doctor now. Like, I have these responsibilities. I have these things that I need to do. Like the same as with motherhood, but you're right. Like it is like, oh, you didn't get back to that pre-pregnancy fitness. And you're like, yeah, when I had nothing to do all day except go work out. Like,
Yeah.
but yeah. Or when my perspectives totally changed and like my priorities, when my priorities totally changed. And then this is like,
Mm.
yeah, but it is hard because you do kind of feel like you need to like validate for yourself and like for other people, like, oh, but I'm still cool. Like I still
Yeah.
yeah. I feel like I grew up in like and that was the struggle with my first was like, I'm not just a stay-at-home mom. This is not the only thing
Right.
that's because that to me that felt like a
Hmm.
trap. Like,
Yeah.
oh, you can't. And
Yeah.
you're like, well, no, I actually I'm choosing to do this. And I'm really grateful to be able to do this,
Hmm.
even on the hard days.
Yeah. 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 I think, yeah, I'd kind of always viewed stay at home mum life as well as like, I don't know, I guess I just thought people were like chilling at home, got to play with their kids a little bit, like watch a bit of TV, and then you do it and you're like, wow, okay, like this is the hardest job I have ever,
Yes.
ever had. And like I had jobs where I worked like 80-hour weeks, and that was like a walk in the park compared with like, yeah, being at home with a kid. Like it's amazing. Like, don't get me wrong, I am not hating on it. Like, but it is
Oh,
tough.
yeah.
Like it is work. Like I kind of think like stay at home maybe is a misleading term, and it doesn't help like the whole mindset piece. Like I feel like it's kind of like working at home, or it's like work that isn't paid and outside the
Yeah.
home, you know?
And what I was watching Boss Baby, which is just like a cartoon, and he's like talking to a dad, and he's like, you don't even get paid for that. And you couldn't even quit if you wanted to. It's like, yeah.
Yep.
I'm gonna try and see if I can move him to a rocker.
So, kind of winding back a little bit, how did you find the transition from kind of before motherhood? Because obviously, so way back when you were full time traveling, right? So, the kind of lifestyle shift and everything was pretty enormous, from kind of doing that to being home with baby, and, everything's different. How did you find sort of navigating that change?
Okay, so that's kind of why I think my first was my hardest for multiple reasons. It was sorry, I'm making lots of noise. I think that's why my first was the hardest because it was COVID. So anybody who had a kid during
Mm.
COVID knows had a kid or had children. Like I've talked to parents who were like, yeah, we had to start homeschooling. And then I had another baby, and then
Right.
I was like home with all the kids and like trying to, and like, it was just a wild time for everyone in the whole world. But like, bringing a new baby in and then not having the village, being super anxious that like
Mm-mm.
they were going to get sick and potentially die because we didn't know at that point. Like,
Yeah, we
the
didn't
things
know.
that you were doing were just insane, just to try and protect your family, and the anxiety that that brought. So there was the layer of COVID, the layer of just having my first kid, the layer of traveling and not traveling anymore. So that's kind of where I was. I was like, I was still getting opportunities like, hey, do you want to go to blah blah blah? And I was like, well, I just want a baby, so no. Um,
Yeah, can't do it.
yeah, and just like the level of non-responsibility I had when I was traveling was like probably what I loved about it the most. And like that's,
Mhm.
I don't know if that's a personality flaw or something, but I was like, oh, can't like I wasn't in people's weddings. They'd be like, oh, if you're here, you could sing because I sang. So I'm like, okay, that's great. Okay, if you're here, you can be at this little weird part of the wedding. And I'm like, sweet. And so like my responsibility was pretty low on everyone's radar. Nobody really like, whatever. When you become a mother, you're responsible for a lot. And it doesn't like you're just you have to feed them and you have to make sure that they're healthy and you have to keep track of everything and like you can't there's just there's no like free bird. I'm gonna just like go do my thing. And some people do it well, like where they get out of the house and they do all that. I was just like, my kid doesn't like the car seat. I am nursing
Mhm.
on demand and she won't take a bottle. So that I was like, that puts me on like a 2 hour leash. I was just like, so this baby needed me so intensely. And that was like way hard going from,
Mm.
oh, I'm going to go to Arizona tomorrow. I'm going to buy my ticket today. Like, bye, to being needed so intensely. And so that was really heavy on me too. And at that point, when I had my first, I was like, things need to be 50-50. Okay, Seth? Like you need to wake up and do these things. You need to like, oh, but you can't bottle feed her. So I don't know. No, she's not hungry. Again, don't ask me that. I know she's crying. Check her diaper, do anything else. Don't tell me she's hungry. And like, it was just so hard. But I feel like you need those growing pains and you need to kind of go through that to fully understand, I don't know, the importance of it and the gravity of it and like to get through the transition of it.
Yeah,
So, yeah, there was a lot of,
it's a lot. Right. I remember I think you mentioned the feeding thing and the 50-50 thing in one of your videos once. And I was like, oh my God, yes, because neither of my girls took a bottle. And we had a moment where both of them like drank from one I'd been pumping, like ready to get them to. And with our second baby, I was like, this baby has to
yes.
take a bottle. We got to do it this time. I need like just something, just 3 hours, not 2 hours,
Yep.
right? Like I need it. And it looked like they were going to do it and then they just never did, and nobody tells you. So you go in and you're like, surely anyone who's not doing it 50-50, their partner must just not be up for it. Like it must just be that. And I'm like, my partner's going to do it. Like we're going to do this. Like I want it 50-50, he wants it. It just
Yeah.
doesn't work that way. Like the babies won't play ball. Like if they only take if they only take the breast,
Yes.
then it's like suddenly biology means that you are the one. And like it does, I don't know, it's tricky to talk about because I don't want to be negative about breastfeeding because I have chosen to do it with both of mine as well. And obviously it's amazing. But I feel like it does seem to create this like you are very much kind of chained to it. But there's a mindset thing there too, right? Where you end up having to be like, you know what? This is the season. I'm going to lean in and I can do all of that stuff, but it's going to be later. And it's hard right now. And like, especially because you're not expecting it. I think like these ideas of like it being in like movies where they have a baby and then nothing changes and like you can pass it to someone and they give them a bottle and you go off and you have a date night and it's all very like amazing. Like for me, that definitely wouldn't have worked. Like breastfeeding, bed sharing, I'm very much like, I haven't left the house in the evening in like 4 years or something. I don't
Yes.
know. Like
Yes.
it's pretty,
Like
it's
driving at night,
intense.
not a chance.
Yeah. Like what is that? Yeah.
Yes.
But then, you get to a point where you're just like, okay, these are the choices that we've made,
Mhm.
and this is what my kids need. And, and obviously it's different for everyone, but I'm just going to be in this season now, and things will be different in a few years. And that's what it is.
Totally. And I think if like I've made all the same choices as you of co-sleeping and exclusively breastfeeding, and like, yeah, we dabbled with a bottle, but I didn't have to go back to work. So like they didn't have
Mm,
to take it.
yeah.
And I think that's what makes the
Yeah.
difference. Like
That's true.
if they're at daycare and they are hungry and their only option is a bottle, then they're of course going to take the bottle because, well, some kids it takes a few days. Like I've talked to moms who are very stressed that their kids are not taking bottles even there.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's hard.
But
Yeah.
eventually you'd think that they would take the bottle and they would, and it's fine.
Mm.
And that was another shift that I had to make of like at night when my baby's crying and I am so overwhelmed. I'm like, where is my husband? Take this baby from me. Like, get this, like, and instead
Mm.
putting the perspective on not me and my needs, but the baby's needs. All they want is
Yeah.
just to be warm
Is
and
you.
yeah, and to nurse and just to feel loved. And so to be like, take this baby away from me, which I absolutely did with my first. I was like, I just need a minute. Like, you have to take him.
Yeah.
Instead of being like, we're going to get through this. All they want is just some love. And
Yeah.
that it makes a difference. And I don't even remember where this started, but yeah, just the choices. And I think that's kind of why we are
Mm.
choosing to be done at 3 because of the intense choices we've made.
Yeah.
And like for you, if you were like, you know what, this is not working. The co-sleeping's not working. Some people say they can't get any sleep because they're co-sleeping or like whatever, then you need to make a change. And that's okay too. Like I don't want people to feel like, "Oh, I'm not co-sleeping, I'm a terrible person, or I'm not breastfeeding, I'm a terrible." My sister had to supplement with formula in the beginning and she was crying feeding her baby this formula. And I'm like,
Oh
Amber,
no.
it's totally
No.
fine. In 6 months, you're going to go, oh, yeah, we kind of had like a tough start. So we did some formula, no big deal. And she's like, I know, but it's
Yeah.
just their immune system and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you're feeding your baby? You're giving your
Yeah.
baby some food so that they're comfortable and fed and healthy? Like, it's okay. There's so many like
Yeah.
nuances to motherhood that you just have to do your best and be proud of that.
Yeah, completely. It's whatever works for the family, right? And so obviously babies needs super central, but also they are not happy and they're not okay if mum is not okay. So there are women who, for mental health
Oh,
reasons, for
yeah.
example, like find breastfeeding or bed sharing too much, and or whatever your reason. Maybe you just don't want to.
Yeah.
Like that is completely cool. Like it's not for everyone. I was very much like a reluctant co-sleeper, actually. Like, to be honest, in the early days we were terrified of it because we'd heard all that stuff about how dangerous it is. My first had silent reflux, and actually it ended up being the only way that we could get any sleep. Educated ourselves about doing it safely and things, and then actually, I just was like, you know what, it gets her sleep, it gets me sleep, like it's amazing.
Yeah.
And then second time around I was just like, whatever gets us sleep is what we're doing. And that was co-sleeping with both girls. And it's survival, isn't it? Like if you can meet everyone's needs, however any family does that, whatever your feeding choices, sleeping choice, like any of it,
Yeah.
it's got to be about keeping everyone happy, healthy, sane.
Safe. Yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
it can be different for each kid too. Like I know people
Yeah.
who homeschool one kid and send the other one to public school because that's what their kids need. And I think that's awesome. I think it's cool that you can look at your kids that closely and be like, this is what you need. This is what you need. And I have a couple co-sleeping, or I have a co-sleeping friend who's third, I think, would not co-sleep. And I was like, if
Wow.
you were not a
Yeah.
co-sleeping parent, I would not believe you. But she's like, no, when she was in bed with us, she was like, what are we doing? It's time to party. I'd put her in her bassinet and she would lay there quietly and go to sleep. And I was like, what is this
Yeah.
unicorn baby? Like, are you kidding me?
Oh my God.
So I think just each family, each child, each season, like maybe it doesn't work anymore for us now that we have 3, then we need to change things up. Like
Yeah.
you're not stuck
Yeah.
in something.
Yeah, all kids are different, right, as well. So, what's working for you for one of them, it might be totally different for another.
Yeah,
And they're individuals. I feel like you can't, I don't know, I kind of am uncomfortable with the whole parenting style and all of this kind of thing. Because I think if you get too much narrowly focused on a dogma and a set of rules and you have to do it all like this, you end up kind of not tailoring things to what your specific
totally.
child needs
Yeah.
and what you need. Being a paid up member of any kind of institution, I'm just like, why wouldn't you just take what works and then, you know, leave the rest?
Yep. I totally agree. Yeah, I agree with you
How have
100%.
you guys found like the different transitions? So obviously, you guys are the pros now with number three. But how did you find the transition from sort of, we've touched a little bit on sort of going from no baby to number one, and then one to two, two to three. Did you find one sort of harder? Obviously, during COVID and all of the things you've spoken about, that's super intense. How have you found the subsequent
For
additions?
us, it was easier. And I think like literally the second I was like, Seth, I haven't cried yet. Like what's happening? It's been a couple weeks and I still haven't cried. And that transition was pretty well. It's also the kids' personalities. So my first
Mhm.
was like, yeah, cool, she's cool. Let's go do something. And just like was sort of uninterested, but like kind of, I don't know. She was happy about it, but she wasn't like overly anything. I'm gonna just switch my nursing pad here. Sorry. um, but she was just kind of nonchalant about it. And it just made it easy. So I just kept the baby in the carrier.
Yeah.
Baby was with me. So she was happy. I was hands-free. So I was happy. And the toddler was happy because the baby was basically invisible in the carrier. And with
Mhm.
this one, they want to hold him very
Um,
all the time. Like the other day, my 4-year-old comes walking in the room carrying him. And I was like, let's not do that again.
Oh.
Let's not carry.
Yeah.
Make sure that mom and dad are with you if you're gonna try that. Like, blah. But my second, I think is having a little bit of like a tough time, like not feeling like she's being replaced, but like I don't carry her as much as I did because
Yeah.
I am already carrying someone. And so she's
Mhm.
constantly like, uppy, uppy. And I'm like, I can't do that right now. Or I try to do it, or I tell dad can do it. And she's like, what the heck? Like, this is not cool. And she's having a much tougher time. So I think that all plays a little bit of a role in like your kids' personalities with it. But as far as my husband and I go, we are in the family, parenthood, whatever. And I've told him that before. I'm like, if you were like, I'm gonna go meet my coworkers at happy hour every Friday or something, or I don't know, if he was just like constantly trying to go do other things, I think I'd have a much tougher time. But he's always like, all right, I got off work and I came home because I missed you guys so much. And I think that's just a personal thing too. Like, I think some people will be like, no, I'm going to go to happy hour with my husband and his co-working friends too, just so that we can like get out of the house and have that freedom and whatever. Like, it's just whatever's going to work best for your family. But for us, it's like a super intense family unit that we both are supporting each other and we both want the same thing. And I think that makes a huge difference. So then when we added another, he took over the toddlers, like I said, and that has been tough, but like it's all in, we're all working towards the same goal of like supporting each other and making sure that everybody feels loved and gets a little activity during the day and like and is fed. I don't know. So I think that helps a lot to be on the same page as your partner, no matter what that looks like.
Do you feel like maybe a lot of the challenges with like babies two and three tend to be more around like just the logistics and sort of kind of adjusting to the new, but more of a practical kind of focus? Whereas obviously the big mental, emotional identity crisis upheaval, you've already done that and you're already like, you already can't just take off and like go traveling or just do spontaneous
Right.
things in the same way because you're already in the motherhood trenches. So like the others tend to be a bit easier. Do you think that's true or?
Well, and I think you just know how to handle it. Like I feel like I could travel right now.
Mm,
I'm like
yeah,
I've got the two. I kind of
yeah,
know
that's
how
true.
they do their thing on like a travel day. This guy, he'd be a breeze, like because he just
Yeah.
sleeps. Same like what we talked about before. It's like I would never do that with my first, but now I'm like,
Yeah, no way.
hey, we have somewhere that we could go in like September. Should we go? My husband's like,
Yeah.
what? But his is logistical. It's like he could get sick on the airplane. He could like,
Hmm.
and I'm like, but it'd be so easy. He's like, I understand that, but there's like other things. But I agree with what you're saying as far as logistics, because between the four of us, me and the three children and my husband, somebody always has to go to the bathroom. Somebody always needs to be
Yeah.
fed. Somebody, like a diaper needs to be changed. And I need to go to the bathroom, which takes like 10 minutes postpartum. And you're just like, there's just no, you sit down and then they're like, I want a water. And you're like, ugh.
Yeah.
There's just more
Yeah.
people to take care of. And even though he's like, I'm like, oh, babies are chill. Like he still needs his diaper changed and he still gets
Yeah.
fussy because he's hungry or because he needs to burp or whatever. And it's lunchtime. And someone has to go to the bed. And
Mm.
we're changing our clothes today for the fifth time. What's happening? They'll just be like, now I want to wear a dress. I'm like, okay, go pick out a dress. And so I do think, yes, there's the emotional, big, like obvious things, but then yes, the logistical, like day-to-day stuff, you're like, it doesn't stop unless we put him in
Yeah.
front of the TV for a bit, right? Or like we shove him out the door and be like, go out then. And they're like, I'm on the swing, push me. You're like, oh my gosh, you're supposed to go play out there by yourself.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Always the way. Yeah, I think like I can imagine with three as well. I'm just thinking because I have like those moments where I've got the two girls and it's just me, and like we'll go out and we'll like get food or get a drink or whatever. And then my eldest is like, I need to go to the toilet. And I've like just got the baby in the high chair and like
There's
sorted all
food
the
on
stuff. And
the
I'm just like, are you kidding? And like we live in London and I'm not going to leave the baby just to go to, even though the toilet's like just there. Like, and you're just like, oh, I'm going to have to put her in the carrier, take you to the toilet, lift you up. Like,
yeah.
yeah. So the logistics with three, obviously, where you don't have a hand for each one, must be interesting.
But I think it's good too. I was thinking about this the other day actually. They need to learn to wait a little bit and they need to learn uh to consider other people a little bit. Not
Mhm.
just because you're like, well, think about this. Your sister's in the high chair, so now I'm gonna have her like and like trying to explain it to them, but they literally have to because it's like I can't do that right now. So you are gonna have to wait, or like you're the one who's comfy in the high chair needs to get out of it. Like you have to consider other people a lot more. I would imagine the more
Yeah.
kids you have.
And I guess they're going to have to wait and build that frustration tolerance. And also they do cry more. And I always sort of hasten to add, like, I don't leave my kids to cry, but like they're gonna be crying maybe a bit longer. Because if you got two that are crying, you can only do the thing for one of them at a time, right? And so obviously each time it's a judgment call as to which one you gotta sort out first. There's gonna be a little bit more of that.
Yeah.
And that's just part of it because you can't split yourself in half and do everything.
Yeah. And you're not doing it to be terrible. You're doing it because you
Yeah, it's
literally
not like
can.
deliberate.
Yeah. And I remember with my first, she would cry for 2 seconds and I'd be like, there. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh,
No.
you can't cry. Yeah. The second, sometimes would cry, like, and I would be trying to nap the other one or like bringing her to the toilet or whatever. And then she would stop crying and she would fall asleep. And I was like, wait, what?
You're like, what happened?
What? You just fell asleep? Like I never even gave my first the opportunity to do that. And now you're sleeping. Like, what? And you learn a lot too, just by like that. And obviously, moms can tell the differences in cries. Like, are you being kind of fussy or are you like screaming because you need something? And like, then I'm gonna leave my kid at home on the toilet and go grab you because like this is a weird cry. Like you
Yeah.
seem very upset versus like, oh, they're kind of
Yeah.
fussy. They can wait a second. It's just,
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah,
But I guess some of that is like confidence as well that comes with
totally.
having had one already or like had more time with them and you've seen all these different because the first time, like I just remember like crying, changing her nappies because she was so upset having her nappy changed. And I was like, I can't deal with you being this upset. And obviously you're like emotional in the days sort of post birth. And I'm just like sobbing. Whereas, yeah, second time around, you're like, yeah, this is what happens. Like,
Hilarious.
it's fine.
I did.
You're fine. You're safe.
Yes.
It's all okay.
Yes, right. I cried changing his this time. Third baby. I'm like,
Oh,
is he cold? Like, well, I'm sorry, I'm waking you up.
oh.
But it is totally the hormones. But the perspective
Yeah.
that you have with subsequent pregnancies, A, is they're not this little for very long. And so you look at your first
Mm.
baby and you're like, you're holding your breath underwater with goggles? Like, what? You're making jokes? Why are you so, like, you have your own thoughts? You understand, like, my husband and I argue about the street lights. It's green, yellow, and red. He says it's
Yeah.
green, orange, and red. Orange? Orange?
Okay.
No. I'm like, it's not orange. Well, she's picking up on that. And she'll be like, Dad, the light is yellow. And she'll be like, Mom, I have something to tell you. The light is orange. And like literally in the same breath, she's doing this back and forth to us because she knows that we're like, that's not the color. And so I'm like, just the capacity that she's understanding this at is
Yeah.
so cool. And then you're like, it's only been 4 years. Like,
Yeah.
how are you? I don't know. So then you just like you're a new baby and you're like, "Ah, this is so precious." And so the perspective you get from having the older ones with the younger and knowing how fleeting the good and the moments are. So when I'm crying, changing his diaper because I'm like so sad about it, I'm like, woof, these hormones are getting me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the first time you'd be like, is it always going to be? Is he always going to cry when I change his diaper? And you just think it's going to be like, you're going to be 30, change his diaper, he's crying. Like, no,
Yeah.
this is a phase. Could be 2 days.
Mm.
It could be 2 weeks. The waking up constantly, that eventually will taper off. Like it just, my first two, once you put them down, they usually sleep. They wake up still, actually, but it's not like the 30 minutes after they go to bed, they wake up and you're
Right.
like, come on, we just started this movie because I finally brushed my teeth and da, 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 now I have to go back up there and make sure that you're fine. And like all of the hard moments will change.
Mm.
And all of the good moments will change too. And so just knowing that I think helps a lot with the
Yeah.
subsequent ones.
It's one of those things, isn't it, that sometimes people are well intentioned when they tell you that first time around. And it's like the whole this too shall pass. But when it's your first and it's so new, that I found that really hard to hear, because I was like, but when? Like, and then it would be like, it'll be easier at 6 weeks, 12 weeks, 6 months, eight. And I was like, it's not getting easier.
Yeah.
Like, but actually when you've done it once, I have found with my second, like, obviously you still have those nights where you're like, it's 3 a.m. I can't do this anymore. I'm exhausted. Like, what is going on? But very quickly, like the next morning, you're like, it's not that bad. This will be over soon. I don't know if this is like a 2 day phase, a 2 week phase, or a 6 week phase, but it gets better because I've done it. I've been here before.
Mm-hmm.
And it won't actually last forever. So like I think, yeah, it does get easier to kind of know that, doesn't it? But I find it really hard, like when you're speaking to friends with their first, because I don't want to be like, I remember receiving that it will end and it is just a phase, and not finding it helpful. But you want to be comforting and be like, I promise it's going to get better. But like, yeah, navigating that.
Well, and you don't want to give them a time either. Like for me,
Yeah.
it's been a year with my first two. Might it take a year and a half with this one? Maybe. If I tell you a year,
Maybe.
maybe it takes you 2 years. And like different kids, like
Yeah.
the terrible twos, that we never had that with our first. We didn't have the
Mm.
three-nager. Four is a new ball game for us. Like, but
Wow.
she's been pretty chill thus far. And now four, I'm like, what the heck? And so if you had told me, oh, just wait till she turns two, she's gonna be a terror,
Mm.
like not helpful. And
Yeah.
I agree with you. It is hard to talk with first-time parents because you're like, I want to tell you everything, but also I don't want you to know anything. Like you have to take this journey
Mm.
on your own, go through these things on your own. When you need someone to talk to or you need advice, ask me, and I am love to share what worked for me. I don't know if it'll work
Yeah.
for you, but I don't want to just unsolicitedly be like this and this and this and this and this because you might never experience any of that. And I don't want to
Mm.
just like Seth and I were like, why is everyone so negative about like the babies and how hard it is and da 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 da. We were so excited and we were just getting so frustrated with everyone being like, oh, sleep now. Oh, better have sex now because that's going to stop. Da, 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 da.
Yeah.
And we were like, this sucks. We want to be excited. And now on the other side, you understand that they were just trying to like prep you for it. But it's not something that you could be coached through. It's something that you have to like
Yeah.
go through and then find the resources
Hmm.
along the way.
Yeah, completely. Like you can't prep for it, you can't store up sleep and like sanity and like all of those things. And it's still going to be, even if you think you're super prepared, something will happen or you'll have a child who's different from your friends or whatever it is. And like, yeah, you just can't, you can't know.
Right. But that's where the mindset comes in. That's where,
Yeah.
and I honestly, with first time parents, yes, it is. I think just trying to work together and know that things are a phase is a good mindset for that. And like my phrase that I always say is do what works until it doesn't, because people are so concerned
I
that
love
like
that.
they haven't sleep trained or their kids not sleep training. It's like, well, are you having
Mhm.
a problem with sleep? Or are you just sleep training because you were told you have to? Like, are
Yeah.
you going back to work? Or are you just pumping because your insurance, well, in the US, they give you a pump. And so like, because your insurance gave you a pump, like, are you just doing that because you think you're supposed to, or because that's what you need to do? So I think going with what feels right for your family and doing it until we're not getting any sleep anymore. My 4-year-old's still in my bed and he needs to get out of the bed. Like, then make a change. But for the first 4 years, you guys got to snuggle and have like co-sleep. Or maybe in the first couple weeks, you're like, co-sleeping is not the way for us. Then that's when you make that change. And I just think not worrying about what the Instagram experts are telling you that you should be doing at each milestone of your baby's life and just being like, this is what's working and I'm happy and my kids
Yeah.
are happy and we're loving it. And we're going to keep doing this until somebody's not loving it.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Do what works until it doesn't. Like, is everyone safe and loved? And is it working for us right now? Great. Because that, the whole logic of like, change it now because one day they're going to have
Yes.
to go to work in an office. It's like, okay, well, shall I send my 2-day old to the office now? Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Like, there's no need to be like, if something is working right now, and then, like you say, maybe a week later, maybe 6 months later, you're like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to co sleep, or now I want to sleep train or whatever it is. People can, make those decisions when it feels good.
Or like night weaning, like what you were talking about.
Yeah. So like my kind of hope was to naturally wean and let her go kind of as long as she wanted, or at least replicate for my first. I fed for like 28 and a bit months. But my first didn't bite like this. And I have like scabs and bleeding. And it's like, it's so bad. I didn't even know the nipples could look like that. It's pretty disgusting. So I'm kind of like, I can't keep doing this. And I tried for a couple of months, but I'm not happy. And it makes me like aversive to feeding, and it's just a really not nice experience. And so I'm a bit gutted and I do feel guilty. I don't think people should, because again, I think you've got to do what works for you. But when you're ending something before you want to, I think it's probably natural to like struggle. But yeah, it was working for me. Breastfeeding, that was fine until it wasn't. And so we're stopping. And yeah, you've just got to kind of go with it, haven't you?
Totally. And it's okay to have all those feelings about it because your expectations versus what's actually happening. But when it's not working for whatever reason, then you make the change. I think it's just a little bit less stressful way to go about it because you're like, this feels
Yeah.
intuitive, but I'm being told not to do it, but it's working for our family. I don't know.
Yeah. I think that's quite a nice way to tune out the noise as well. Cause like there's so much advice, but sometimes I think you can be like, okay, well, if I need to listen to my intuition, but how do I know what that is when I'm getting told all this stuff? But actually, if you just focus on what is working, like what are you doing? How's that feeling? Is it working? Then just carry on with that. And then when that changes, that's when you start to do something different.
Well, and exactly what you said with co-sleeping. You were like, no, this is not, we don't feel comfortable with this. Oh, she has reflux. This is all that's working. Okay, now I need to find the resources for how to do this safely.
Right.
Boom. And that's what you
Yeah.
do. Yeah.
And then we did it until she was 3, and like it was great. I co-slept with both girls when I had my second because I felt like that was sort of best for all of us. And then when she was 3, I was like, actually, I can't have the two of them waking me up anymore. That's not working for me. So then we moved her to a toddler bed and figured it out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, I think I mean, that's what's worked for us. And I feel like it's a good just way to think about it.
Yeah. No, I love that. I think that's going to be like my new mantra. Was there a point where you kind of felt like you started to find your flow in motherhood, or was it sort of more of like a gradual process?
It was definitely gradual, but I think once I had my second, and it like was going well, I was like, okay, I can do this. We can do this. Everything's working out. Like, I think the second kind of gave me the confidence of like, okay, I got it. We can, yeah. So, I mean, that's a short answer, but I think it was gradual. I think it was the mindset because my husband is like a very gratitude heavy person where he's just like, Shayla, you think you're not doing a great job, but holy crap, like you're doing a great job. The kids are being fed.
Mm.
You like are loving on them. You're doing activities with them. Like maybe you watch TV all day. He loves TV. So he's like, I mean, he loves TV and whatever, but he's like, it's okay that they're watching TV. Or sometimes I'll call him and I'll be like, I lost it. I lost it. I yelled at Aaliyah. And I'll be like, Aaliyah, what are you? Stop asking me so many questions. And then immediately I like am bawling because I feel terrible for yelling at her. And he's like, Shayla, you yelled at her. Yes, that's not okay. Or whatever. He doesn't say it's not okay. He goes, first of all, that's the exception, not the norm. So it's okay. Second of all, she's not physically hurt. You are going to go recover with her. Like it's all going to be okay. This is you're overwhelmed. And instead of like reprimanding me, because that's what I'm expecting, calling him, being like, oh, I just did this thing. And I'm like confessing to you. I do that with my sister. I'll be like, this is what happened. And she's like, you're still a good mom. It's okay. And I think that those two things, like it's the exception, not the norm. And that, I don't know, you still kind of wonder if you're damaging them. You're like, am I yelling at
Yeah.
you and you're going to talk about this with your therapist later? Like, I know I'm not physically hurting you, but am I emotionally damaging you? Like, I don't know. But like my mom yelled and it was fine. And
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I think from everything that I've learned is if you have those moments, because you will have those moments, it's about the recovery. And hey, I'm really
Mhm.
sorry I yelled. I shouldn't have yelled. I'm feeling a little overwhelmed.
Right.
I didn't get a ton of sleep last night and not because of them, like not being like you didn't let me sleep. I didn't get a ton of sleep. I'm just feeling a little overwhelmed and I shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry. And just like recovering with them to show them like, hey, it's okay to not be on 100% of the time, but you also need to take
Mhm.
responsibility for the things that you did and like try and repair.
Yeah. Yeah, completely. Like, I guess our generation is sort of under a lot of pressure, I think, because we have this knowledge now of how to do it better. And I think so many of us are striving to, right? Because, like I was a kid in the 90s and the vibe then was very different. And,
Totally.
but they only knew what they knew. They were doing
Exactly.
their best too, and they inherited a different set of advice about what to do. But like, yeah, I think we can beat ourselves up for sometimes reverting to maybe stuff that we had when we were kids and or like yelling and also we're human. Like we can't I'm not the most zen person and I try and like I'm so much better because I've had to like practice with my
Yeah.
kids, but like I'm human and I get overstimulated and like I'm gonna lose it. I'm always in therapy, like to my therapist I'll be like I said this to my kids and I feel awful, or like I raise my voice and I don't want to and that's not what I want to do. But actually, like you say, it's the repair, isn't it? And I've really noticed actually. So our 4 year old, she's amazing at like she'll have like her meltdown or whatever and shout or say she says quite a lot of like mean stuff when she's upset. She'll go away and then she'll come back like 10 minutes later and she'll be like, Mummy, I'm really sorry I said mean things. I was feeling frustrated. And I'm like, she can do that because when we do it, when I like raise my voice at her, I go to her, hey, I'm really sorry. I was feeling frustrated. I'm sorry I raised my voice. I shouldn't have spoken to you like that. That wasn't cool. Like I
Mm-hmm.
should have taken a deep breath instead. But she
Yes.
can do it to me now. She like comes
Yes.
and she's learned it. But and like obviously I still do my best to improve, right? I
Yeah,
still try
always.
and sort my stuff out. But those moments are also like kind of good for them in a way too sometimes because then they learn how to repair and say sorry and it's all like yeah, it's
Well,
part of
and
life.
in my guide, I talk about how awareness is like huge. So if you were yelling
Mm,
and you were repairing, like sometimes it takes me getting to that like level of like, oh my gosh, I'm about
mhm.
to lose my mind to trigger my awareness to go, I'm here. I'm here. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
Instead of
Mm,
exploding and going, okay,
yeah.
this is my trigger. I need to take a deep breath. I need to connect with my kids because they are upset about something and I need to figure out what that is and just like I diffuse myself because I've done the work and because I'm aware of
Hmm.
that feeling and how I want to be instead of how I don't want to be. And so
Yeah.
I think, yeah, I think that the awareness is like the biggest piece. So even when it does happen, if you just like moved on with your day and you're like, okay, I apologize, cool, done.
Mhm.
That's one thing. But if you're like, okay, what just happened? Why am I
Yeah.
overstimulated? Why did I freak? Like, why did I yell? What could I have done differently instead? And a lot of time for me, it's sleep. Like, okay, is this day
Hmm.
4 of not getting enough sleep? Tonight, I actually need to go to bed when they go to bed because I'm
Hmm.
not being the mom that I want to be because I'm choosing to not do that. And I don't, it doesn't have to be every night that you're going to bed at the right time, but like tonight has to be that night. And just figuring out what your triggers are and then like how to calm yourself down. Sometimes for me, it's turning on just like music and just being able to ground to that
Hmm.
music. And my sister, it's the opposite. She's like, that's too much noise. I'm already overstimulated. I don't need background music. And just like
Right.
knowing the pieces to help you. And also for me, it's literally sitting down on the floor with them, asking them if they need a hug. What is actually going on? How come you're upset? And I've done this with my
Hmm.
partner too, because he'll get mad that I like left dishes in the sink. And I'm like, I don't think you're mad
Right.
at the
Yeah. Like,
dishes.
what's this
Yeah,
about?
what's
Yeah.
actually are you like what's going on here? And like being
Hmm.
able to do that and not immediately be like, I have been doing so much today. I'm sorry about the dishes in the sink. Are you okay? And being like, you're not, you've never been mad about the dishes before. Like, is something stressful at work? What happened at work? Like, what's going on? Do you need a minute? Like, do you need to go take a workout or like, what do you need? Yeah. So again, I think just being aware of this is not who I want to be is very, very
Mhm.
powerful.
Completely. It's it's funny, isn't it? It really shocked me how much of motherhood and having kids is actually about the kind of mindset and the awareness and like about you. It's not really about them and what they're doing. It's
Yes.
about you and how you're managing how you respond to everything.
Yeah. And how you've been taught and how there's so much self-work that goes into being a mother to be able to manage other people's emotions and teach them and to be the person that you want to be because nobody likes to feel that anger and feel that frustration and then yell. And so I think just the self-work that goes into it is heavy because you know that it's on you and there's a lot of accountability that encompasses, but
Yeah.
it also can be very light because now you know that you have the freedom to control the situation a little bit better and it's not just my kids are out of control. It's my response to my kids is
Mm.
creating this. And I've seen even at bedtime, if I'm like, you guys, it is time to go to sleep. Like, why are you not sleeping? That energy, they match
Yeah.
it. And then it takes
Yeah.
so much longer. But if you can just remain calm and be like, okay, please come lie down. And like some people are like, oh, you're gentle, but you're just letting your kids walk all over you. You're like, no, I'm demonstrating the energy I want them to have. And it's low
Yeah.
key. We're going to sleep. You still need to get a couple wiggles out. You still need to chat, chat, chat instead of being like, stop talking, stop talking, stop talking, stop talking. Let them like chat around a little bit and like get all the like everything out. And sometimes mine will literally chat, 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 chat. And then I'm like, is she sleeping? And she just falls asleep like after the sentence. I'm like, okay.
Wow.
So just kind of, it's such a learning curve. And talking to older parents with older kids, it sounds like it never stops. Like we're just going to keep
Yeah.
learning in different ways.
Yeah, I guess like each age and stage, it's like new stuff, right? Like as some things get easier, there are new like challenges and
Hmm.
it's all just rolling with it. But I guess that's why like the mindset stuff that you speak about and you know in some of your videos, like I find them so helpful because actually that kind of gives you a foundation for whatever the specifics of the difficult bit that you're in. You know, if you've got your stuff kind of, obviously we can't be perfect, but if you broadly, you know where you want to be and you're, like you say, it's the awareness of trying to be better that gives you a foundation, right? And you've got your mindset flip book, which is amazing with prompts on how little points to kind of think about.
Yeah.
But you've got a guide coming out too, right? Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah. So it's a journaling guide. So it basically walks you through like, okay, when is the best time to journal? And it could be daily. It could be when you feel that trigger. So like naps were mine big time with my kids. And my husband would just be like, you just have to accept that they're not going to nap and move on. And I'm like, do you know how hard that is? I've literally been trying to get them to nap for 30 minutes and they're not doing it now. I'm just supposed to forget about it and not have my free time. Like, grrr. So that would be a trigger when you need to start journaling. And it talks about how the most efficient way to journal. And so not just like, I want to do this differently. Like that's not going to tell your brain what to look for. But the main thing for me was acknowledging my circumstances, accepting my circumstances, and then adapting to my circumstances. So for me, hey, are you hungry? I know. It's so funny. If he's fussy and he doesn't get consoled by nursing, I'm like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah, I feel like that's a breastfeeding default, right? I'm like, I don't know how you parent when you don't like, I mean, I think you've got to do that's not because I think you have to do it. It's more just because I've done it.
This
That's
way.
all I've got. That's my
Yeah.
only tool. Like, if you don't want that, then like I don't know what I have for you. Like, I'm like, I don't know how dads do it. I say to my husband, like, what do you do? Like, you don't have any juice. Like, what's your thing? How do you
But they
manage?
find something.
They do. Yeah,
Yeah.
completely.
It's so funny. Okay. So acknowledge your circumstances. So for me, my husband does shift work. So he is gone like all day for like 4 days in a row. And for a long time, I was like, this is not what I signed up for. This is not okay. This is not, I would wait for him to wake up because he would need to sleep in and sleep in. So he would get his 7 hours of sleep, but he'd sleep till like 2 because he got home at whatever in the morning. And I would wait until 2 to like start my day. And finally I had to be like, okay, no, these are my circumstances. I'm not going to wait till 2 for him to wake up because he doesn't want me to. He doesn't want me to just sit around and wait for this. I had to just realize like, this is what I'm working with. And then adapt and be like, I am still going to go out and do things. I might go to all these events by myself. And that is something that I'm going to have to be comfortable with and be happy with. Like once you recognize what your circumstances are, then you can choose what you do next. And instead of just like being upset about it all, now we're like stoked that we get to go to the zoo during the week because he's off
Right.
during the week. Like you find the positives in what you have and you just decide how you want to live your life. And so the guide has a lot of things about when the best time to write, the most efficient way to write, and then the questions to ask yourself to figure out who you want to be and how to actually make that happen. And then it applies to all circumstances like we've been talking about.
Yeah, I love that. I think like kind of reframing or like rewiring how you look at it and sort of changing your approach and adapting for motherhood. I feel like it's the way to survive and thrive in it, right? Because you don't just want to be like getting through everything. You want to actually be like enjoying it. And I think when you can go through that process, you actually can sort of actually start to be like, this is amazing. We were saying before we hit record just about the difficulty sometimes though of treading the line between acknowledging the challenge and sharing that hard stuff and being honest about the realities, but also not being super negative and like hating on everything. And how do you kind of celebrate the joy but not be toxically positive and tell people to like, and I think what you just spoke about as a process, like accepting, but also that there are things in your control, right? So if you can change those, you can adapt and you can kind of reframe around that and focus on the positives in the situation you have.
Yes, I agree. And I think just like understanding what kind of a mom you want to be, like I've decided that I want to be a calm one where like they can attach to my calm energy, which is really hard. But I also I want to get out and do things. Like I want to be active. And so being conscious of that, like one time when I was journaling, I was like, we could go to the farmer's market. We could go and walk around the lake and find a breakfast spot there. We could go to the zoo one day and make it a whole day and have a picnic and da da da. And like these thoughts are brand new to me. They're brand new. I'm like, what? Why didn't I think of this? And like that following week was the best week of my life because I was like, today we're gonna go to the farmer's market. Tomorrow we're gonna go
Yeah.
have breakfast and walk around the lake. And like once you realize what you do want, instead of focusing on all the things that you like, oh, my husband's not gonna be able to go. Oh, I have to do this all with my kids. And how am I gonna do it with 3 kids? And you're like, no, these are things that I want to do and
Yeah.
that I want out of my motherhood and that I want out of just life. Oops, sorry, bud. And then your brain finds ways to make it happen
Mhm.
instead of just focusing on all the things that you are unhappy with.
Yeah. Yeah. And what do you want motherhood to look like, right? And like what do you enjoy? Because you
Mhm.
can actually go for that. Like, because I think growing up, I just kind of thought, oh, if you're a stay-at-home mom, you have to like bake cookies and wear florals. And I don't like baking and I didn't want to dress up. And like, you get there and it's like, okay, so what do I want? What do I enjoy? And how can I kind of obviously it's not always as simple, especially in the early years where like there is some logistics around getting to do different
Totally.
things. Like I can't
Yeah.
I can't go boxing really very much anymore because it's, with a
Yeah.
baby, that's hard. But
Yeah.
like you said, like you can do stuff. I mean, I think you had a video taking your kids to Hawaii and, like I'd never been brave enough with my first, but now I'm like, if we want to travel, like we should go somewhere. We should just
Yeah.
go on holiday. Or like today, I like to work out and my eldest like has a balance bike and I was like, okay, you do that. I'm gonna run with you. It's gonna be great. Like
Yes.
six boxes for both of us.
Yeah.
You can kind of shape it a bit more to how you want it to feel.
Yeah. And I think that when you're like consciously thinking about it and journaling about it or meditating about it, and you do that, and the first time it's terrible because they only want to go a block and then they're done with
Yeah.
the bike. And now you have to carry the bike and you have to da 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 da. When you're writing about it and you're going, no, this is important to me. Like, this is something that I want to work at.
Hmm.
This is something that we could, then you're going to go for it on day two, even though you only made
Yeah.
it a block. Then you're going to go for it on day three and four and five until your kid's like, oh, this is what we do. This is how, like, there's a learning curve for both of you to figure out how to make
Yeah.
this work properly. And if you try the first time and it's an epic failure, great, try again if it's something that you really is important to you. But
Yeah.
if you're just kind of like, well, maybe I can run while I do the bike, oh, that didn't work, that's
Yeah.
different than going, it's important for me to be able to get this movement in, and here's a
Yeah.
spot where I think it could fit in, and I want to actually attempt to make this work. And yeah,
Yeah.
I think just really like, because I did it when we went to Hawaii. I journaled about, because somebody was like, oh, like the time change is pretty hard with kids. Literally, I was like, okay, at 3 a.m. I would journal. Okay, at 3 a.m., one of them is going to wake up and they're going to be ready to go because it's normal time to wake up at home. And that makes sense. It makes sense that they're on the same time that they would be before. And I'm going to wake up calmly and I'm going to get myself some coffee and we're going to go check out like the patio, and we're definitely going to watch TV, and I have no problems with that. We're going to watch the sunrise. This is going to, and so at 3 a.m. on the first morning, when my youngest woke up and said, all done sleep, I was like, we're here. And
Okay.
I'm calm. And you know what? I'm
Hmm.
also on Minnesota time. Okay. So I am also not tired at 3 a.m. Gonna get up, and it's because this is the start of our day. And it changed everything. Cause I can imagine not having pre-thought about it. You're like,
Hmm.
go
Go
back
back.
to sleep. We just did
Hmm.
a giant travel day. How are you not tired? What, like, why are we awake right now? I just want to sleep. And then your husband, you're like, I'm not going to wake him up. Where before I'd
Hmm.
be like, get up. Like,
Yeah.
can you go with the kid? Like, what's happening? I was like, no, one of us maybe I want to take a nap later. And I'm going to let him
Yeah.
continue to sleep so that I can get a nap later because I feel great. I feel calm. I'm gonna go get my coffee and just like pre-thinking about those hard moments, pre-thinking about the naps that take you 30 to 60 minutes that they don't take, and like being like, okay, again, the perspective is changing to the needs of my child. They're not sleepy.
Yeah.
And no matter what I do or how long I do this, they're not tired. And so I can't be mad at them for that.
Yeah.
And just
But
kind
like
of
if
like,
you are, then you're still in the same position, right? You're not going to get more sleep.
yes,
It's not going to be better. So you can either like have a
yes.
miserable time or, with your rehearsal and journaling, you're kind of
Yep.
like, okay, this is how we're going to do it. And actually,
Yep.
yeah, this feels good.
Yes, exactly.
That's amazing. Yeah, I'm conscious of time and your little one there, but I guess sort of just quickly, we've touched a little bit on partners and also like you just said, where at one point you would have been like, right, get up. Like I 100% would have been the same. Whereas now you're
Yeah.
just like, it makes sense for someone to get rest. Like it's not going to be me. I know that now. So like you do it because later, well, I'll tap out and you'll tap in and
Yep.
yeah. But I guess, there's a lot that comes, isn't there, with like navigating the relationship and the changes over time. How have you and Seth found sort of across all three kids? How have you found sort of relationship changes post baby?
I think just like knowing that we're in it together and seeing that when he's home, and like knowing that I will get a chance to nap later because he will be more than happy to let me do that. And like, I think just me learning how to ask for help and seeing his response be so positive. He's always like, yeah, of course. Like, go. I'll be like, I'll only be gone for 30 minutes. He's like, okay. And if you're gone for longer, it's fine. So I think just like the experience of us doing it for so long, because in the beginning, it's so hard because you're both trying to figure out your responsibility, like where you fit in with this baby. And I feel like when you're breastfeeding and co-sleeping, like the dads don't have a lot that they can do. And
Yeah.
I know that with a couple of ours, Seth has felt like disconnected from them for the first 2 years because he can't really offer them what they are like desperately needing. He can be fun and he can be whatever, but like ultimately they're like, I want my mom because that's
Yeah.
my sustenance. And so that too, like realizing that probably around 2 is when he's gonna like really connect. He's been carrying this one, like our third, a lot more just to kind of try and get that connection a little earlier. Like when we go on
Yeah.
walks, I used to always just be like, I'll carry them. I'll do this. I'll do da, 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 da. He's like, hey, can I carry him around Target so that he gets used to my voice and my
Mm.
smell and my whatever? And I'm like, yeah, let's give it a go. So I think it's just the experience. And I think just leaning into each other and trying to support one another as best you can and asking for the help when you need it. Because I don't know why I specifically, but I feel like a lot of moms have this complex that like you shouldn't ask for help.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? Or like, I think I'd just let myself get so run down and burnt out. And then I'm like, I need help, but I don't know what I need. And like at that point,
Yes.
it's kind of too late, or like it's never too late, but it's gone too far, right? It needs to be sooner. And actually, then like we'd have calmer conversations where he'd be like, oh, like I've been trying to help, but we'd realize he was trying to help in the wrong way. Like he'd be trying to do all this
Yes.
stuff, like clean the house and all that. And I'm like, I don't care. Like, I don't want that. Like, I just want you to hug me, or I just want you to run me a bath, or I just want you to. And it's like, okay, so actually, like, if you just told me that, then, I could have done that for you. And so actually now we're so much better at just being like, what do you need? What do you need?
Mm-hmm.
And then you tell them and don't expect them to read your mind. And
Yes.
it's actually fine.
Totally. And we had the exact same experience where I literally wrote on the fridge, like dishes, laundry, general cleanup. And he's like, this is so dumb, but so helpful. Like,
Yeah.
because now I know the three things that you're looking at when I'm trying to like pick up the toys in the living room. And I'm like, I don't care about the toys in the living room. Or he's like,
Right.
whatever. He has his own list too. Like he's looking at the grass outside.
Yeah.
I'm not looking at the grass. I don't even care if you, whatever, but just kind of like sharing like these are the things that would be the most helpful. And then they're like, cool, now when I do something I know exactly what is going to help you the most. Okay, great.
Yeah.
It's happening.
And like, I guess knowing that you're, yeah, both maybe looking at different things that like I literally said the
Yeah.
other week as well. I was like, oh, I had no idea that you hate taking the bins out. Like, I didn't know you hate taking out the trash. I just kind of thought it was fine. And he's like, no, like, I love this. This is just like an invisible thing that I do. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, this is a thing you hate and you do it all the time. And it's invisible to me that you're like doing this stuff that is helpful. And, I guess we both have stuff like that for each other, but it's little things, isn't it? And kind of, yeah, just like communicating and trying to like better ask people what they want.
Yeah. And maybe like you don't mind the bins, but you hate the dishes, and he doesn't mind the dishes and hates the bins. So then you're like, okay, cool, I'll do that. You do this. Now we're both doing
Yeah.
things that we don't mind doing. The chores
Yeah,
that we don't mind. Yeah.
completely. Yeah. Do you have kind of go-to tips, I guess, or advice for new moms and, parents who are literally like taking the first steps and navigating that kind of first identity shift? What would you want to say to them?
I think if it's your first, well, we even still do it in our third, but the 50-50 thing is just in the beginning, it just is not. And this could be different for like different people if they're choosing to do bottles or if they're whatever. There's lots of different circumstances, but from what I found to be the most helpful is mom takes care of baby primarily, dad takes care of mom. Because if mom can
Mm,
be taken care of, like with my first, I think I had a little postpartum depression because of all of those things I talked about. And my
mhm.
midwife, and I think my therapist too, was like, typically postpartum depression and anxiety is a lack of support. And I was like,
Right.
what? I feel like I've got a lot of support from Seth. But we were both trying to take care of the baby.
Yeah.
And at this time, Seth is like, I noticed that when I pick up the house, you're in a better mood. I'm like, you did? Thanks. And so, like, he's taking care of me by taking care of the girls and making sure that they're fed and making sure that I'm fed. And like, it makes it so much easier on me. So I would say that, like, dads absolutely be involved in your baby's life. I feel like that's not even needs to be said. But taking care of mom is going to be the most impactful thing that you can do to help the transition, I think. And then moms need to check in with dads because that's a huge responsibility and
Yeah.
task. And like
Mhm.
something that potentially the mom has been doing more of. And so it can be a lot for them too. And so just checking in and being like, how are things for you? Because nobody checks in on dad. First they check in on baby, then they check in on mom. They probably won't check in on dad. Like they just assume it's fine for him. But like this is a huge transition for him too. Like he also is not going to go to the gym for 3 hours anymore. Or like a
Mhm.
golf day is a really big ask. And just
Yeah.
like, especially in the newness of everything. And so I don't know, just checking in with each other and giving each other so much grace because it's so nuanced for everybody that yeah, it's just hard to prepare for. But as long as you two are supporting each other, like that's
Mm.
crucial.
Yeah. No, I love that. I feel like it's something when you mentioned that it not being 50-50 thing in a video once, I was like, thank God, like somebody is like saying this and acknowledging it. And like, because that was my experience, but because I was so like, it has to be 50-50 and that's so the expectation.
Yeah.
And, you know, like, it's just so counter to like a lot of the things we're brought up to believe as well, isn't it? Like, so you don't want it necessarily to be that like your job is kind of baby
Yes.
and of course, like you say, dad can be involved, but I mean, certainly if you're breastfeeding, but probably also like whether you bottle feed or breastfeed or however you do sleep, I'm sure, you know, they are wired as young infants pretty much primarily to want mom. And I just, yeah, I kind of wish I'd known that more so that I wasn't fighting it because when we were both fighting that, you're stressing about the fact that they can't like calm baby down and all of this. And actually, like you say, I think if they take care of you, you take care of them primarily, like not
Yeah.
necessarily exclusively, but like
Yeah.
if you kind of go into it knowing that that might be what it looks like, it's less of a shock to the system, right? Like you kind of know what you're in for a little bit more.
And hopefully less resentful because I was
Yeah.
so resentful that like he
Mm-hmm.
didn't wake up when she woke up. And I learned that that's biology too. Like moms are, our brains are wired to wake up to their cries, where
Yeah.
dads' brains are wired to wake up to like sounds in the house or sounds outside or whatever. So when they're not waking up, it's literally because we are wired to and they are not. And otherwise, you're just pissed at your husband that he's not waking
Mm-hmm.
up. But they said it's the same for same-sex couples. There's usually one primarily that
Interesting.
wakes up to the baby and then one primarily that wakes
Mm-hmm.
up to like safety things. But it's like,
Amazing.
yeah. And once you like just those little bits of knowledge, then you're like not so angry that your husband, who's literally laying right next to you, is not waking up to this crying baby. Like, how is that a
Yeah, like all
thing?
those angry reels on Instagram where it's like, oh
Yes.
my God, like, why are we? But it's like, actually, yeah, they're wired differently. And it's a waste of energy to be like upset about it because it's
Yeah.
not their fault. And yeah,
Yeah.
like
And someone in the beginning told
crazy.
me one tired parent is better than two. And that helped me
Mm-hmm.
a lot too, because I'd be like,
Yes.
okay. And him knowing that, because then it was like, okay, when the baby naps later, I'm going to nap with them because I'm tired, but you can sleep now so that you can hold us.
Yeah.
Luckily, Seth and I are able to be like, when I'm losing it, he's like calm and steady, and vice versa.
Yeah, totally. No, I love that. So I always ask everybody these three sort of last quick fire questions. So what do you do and sort of enjoy that is like just for you?
Dude, a lot of people have a hard time answering that. I feel like that's
Yeah.
just such an insane. Like it used to be yoga. I used to go do
Yeah.
yoga. Travel used to be my thing. But I think I really have tried to turn the lens, and I think that I enjoy learning about how to support them best it's motherhood related. I don't know that I have
I love
anything
that.
outside of motherhood right now, but like listening to audiobooks, listening to podcasts, like long form. I don't want to learn on Reels. I don't want to learn on Instagram. I want to learn by
Yeah.
like reading a book or, like I said, listening to a podcast, and also like my personal growth. So I'll go back and forth from like, this is how you support your kid to like, this is how you support yourself, like
Mhm.
spiritually or goal oriented or whatever, or
Yeah.
relationships. I like learning about relationships and like how to support each other that way too. So I think just learning is what I love.
Yeah. I love that. No, I'm obsessed with like learning, but I really love that you're kind of like, actually, like it is kind of about motherhood. It doesn't have to be, because I think sometimes as well, there's this pressure to be like, I'm not just a mom, I do like,
Yes.
but actually like, it's cool. Like we're in like our mom era and like, if doing things that support that, like, and being interested and developing that, like that's cool. And like, that's amazing. No, I love that. And what has been your biggest revelation about motherhood?
Mm, I think that the only constant is change.
Mm.
The only thing that's consistent is that everything will change, and kind of finding peace with that instead of like frustration or confusion, and being like, okay, this is
Yeah.
working now, and I'm gonna bask in it and think it's really, really hard. There will be an end to it.
So true. Like hard maybe to like accept, but yeah, you kind of get there, right? It's like a process. And what kind of legacy, I guess, or like impact do you want to leave behind?
I think with my work, so like with the stuff that I do, I want moms who are like, you help me so much with X, with this, with whatever. Because I I try to be the gateway. So like I'm gonna plant the seed. And if that isn't, or you're like, yeah, co-sleeping, that would be nice. Oh, you have resources for how to do it safely. Oh, you have like information about the biology behind it. Oh, cool. Oh, I want to do cloth diapering. I want to do anything. Now the mindset stuff, because before it was all like logistical stuff, right? Like here's cloth diapering, here's elimination communication, and now I'm like, okay, but the overarching theme needs to be the mindset, because it's a mind game. Like it's just your happiness that depends on it. And so I think the work into that is so crucial and important. So I think that the legacy I would like to leave is just help moms transition, or just like enjoy it, accept it, and like not feel guilty about that. Like we've
Yeah.
said, we grew up in a time of like, kind of you're a failure if you're just a stay-at-home mom. And it took me a long time to realize that that's not the case, and that it's a
Yeah.
choice. If you don't want to be a
Mhm.
stay-at-home mom, great. You went to school to be
Yeah.
a doctor and you want to keep doing that. I love that for you. I think
Hmm.
just like accepting whatever your reality is and being confident in it. And I just want
Yeah.
to help people do that.
That's so, so powerful. And like you say, like it's a choice, right? Like nothing is for everyone, but like if something is for you, like leaning into it and like really, yeah, feeling good about it.
Mm-hmm. And finding the resources to support it. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I've absolutely loved this. Like, where can people find you, and when is your guide coming out? How can people sort of access all those bits and pieces if they want to know more?
Everything is Hey Shayla. Instagram is Hey Shayla. YouTube is Hey Shayla. My podcast is Hey Shayla. My website is Hey Shayla. And so you'll find the guide on my website. It'll be heyshayla.com/shop, because that's where I have my flip book. That's where I have a bunch of free resources for like questions to ask your provider to make sure they're on the same page if you want to do an epidural, or if you want to do a natural birth, and just like the resources that they have or whatever. So the guide is there, and I'm on all of those. Shayla is spelled Shayla.
Thank you so much. And yeah, again, grateful that you're able to come with little one there. He's been amazing. Like, bless him.
I know. So great.
Oh,
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
that's it for today's episode of the More Than Mama podcast. Thank you so much for listening and being part of our community. If you enjoyed today's conversation, don't forget to subscribe, rate, leave a review, and share with your friends to help us reach more amazing mums like you. Let's continue the conversation. Connect with us on social media at the More Than Mama Pod, and I'm also on there as Bryony Writes on Instagram. It's always great to hear your thoughts, stories, and ideas for future episodes. Chat to you soon.